Susan, we've seen these three people. We've heard what they know. We've heard what they think. Let's get Kelly and Roger up there at the table and let's see if let's have some real fun and see if we can. We know these three guys are real good. No problem. I'm still Mike, and I'm still from Birmingham, and I still love you. Y'all were great then.
Can you all hear Roger laughing in the background? He has a funny laugh.
I don't know if he's laughing or doing something else, and I'm scared to ask. I don't know what that is. But I tell you what, when I saw the list for today, and I saw that you were the last group we would get to see, I was tickled to death. I've been looking forward to hearing you all day, and this is going to be a joy. Susan, you've seen them too, hadn't you?
I have indeed, but not this unit.
Oh, that's right, not this group. Okay, that's good. Tell them who you are.
My name is Susan Firestone. I'm a retired patent and trademark attorney from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I judged Unit 2.
You did, but she's back. She's back now to see y'all. Your Honor.
Good afternoon. I'm Taubman. I'm a senior judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals in Denver, Colorado.
Yes, he is, and a terrific judge. Tell us once more for the record. I guess one more for this. This is your last period too. So one more for the ages. Tell us who you are and introduce anybody you want to introduce to us.
Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Merowitz, and we're all juniors at Easthampton High School.
Good afternoon. My name is Zoe O'Neill Garvey, and we're representing the state of Massachusetts.
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Gallagher, and this is our wonderful teacher, Mr. Kelly Brown.
Good afternoon, folks.
Hey, KB, anytime you want to hop up there and grab a chair, go ahead, and we'll do what we need to do.
When I have an absent kid, I do it all the time, and it's a blast.
I bet it is. You may have figured this out by now, but let's play with question one more time for you, if you will, and I'll give you a chance to pull it up, and I'll read it from Marcy's recording, and off we go. Unit 3, question 1. The right to vote was not expressly included in the Constitution of 1787. In your opinion, was the implied right to vote sufficient for the creation of a representative democracy? How did the expansion of voting rights affect the evolution of democracy in our country? Give examples. And finally, this little matter, which is the greater threat to democracy, disenfranchisement or fraud, and explain your position. I know y'all are tired, but y'all are going to perk us up. One more round. You ready to go? We're at your disposal.
The implied right to vote in the Constitution was not sufficient for the creation of a representative democracy. This right was implied in the Elections Clause in Article 1, the Electoral College, and Republicans' Government Clause, but was never explicitly stated. Although it has been gradually extended over time through amendments like the 15th Amendment and legislation like the Voting Rights Act of 1965, suffrage has been treated as a privilege. The lack of an explicit constitutional right to vote has led to weakened judicial protections. Although Harper v. Virginia Board of Elections stated that voting was a fundamental right, Crawford v. Marion County used a standard of review below strict scrutiny when they declared an Indiana voter ID law constitutional.
Legal scholar Robert Dahl suggests that self-determination is the most effective form of representation, which arguably did not exist until 1965. Dahl also argues that true democracy has 5 key elements, including effective participation, voting equality, enlightened understanding, control of the agenda, and inclusion of adults. The implied right of voting alone is not enough. The 4 other elements are needed. Today, we still fail to reach effective voting participation, arguably the easiest element to reach. In 2016, there were 245 million people who were old enough to vote, and of them, only 158 million were even registered. And of those registered, only 136 million actually voted in the election. Additionally, millions of people are disenfranchised in America, and a deep distrust in democracy is growing.
Expansion of voting has brought America closer to Robert Dahl's true theory of democracy and extended self-determination. Over time, self-determination expanded to Black men in the 14th and 15th Amendments, and then to women through state laws in the 19th Amendment. The 17th, 23rd, 24th, and 26th Amendment further extended participation. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 helped break down barriers, and local and state laws have expanded who can participate, which makes it easier to control the agenda.
Modes of participation were expanded during the COVID-19 pandemic for safety reasons. These changes include access to mail-in ballots, extended deadlines in early voting, which brought us closer to Robert Dahl's idea of true democracy. But there are still major issues. An example of this is felon disenfranchisement, which was held constitutional in Richardson v. Ramirez, allowing states to bar convicted felons from voting without violating the 14th Amendment to the Constitution.
Today, over 3 million felons are currently disenfranchised despite completing their sentences.
Election integrity is essential to democracy. The American election system is secure and sufficient. Our diffuse system that relies on city and county clerks, secret paper ballots, and voter registration makes it difficult for fraud and foreign interference to occur. Democracy requires faith in elections, and recently, people have doubted our system. Due to COVID-19, states loosened voting regulations, leaving room for suspicion and doubt, despite little evidence of fraud. Former President Trump and his supporters filed at least 63 lawsuits attacking state procedures, deadlines, voter rolls, and the Dominion voting system. Court after court dismissed the lawsuits for lack of standing and being without merit. Brennan Center and Columbia University studies found there was little to no voter fraud in the 2020 election, but 70% of Republicans still believe there were some major issues. Unfortunately, the president, media, and politicians seized the moment for political advantage, creating distrust.
This is irresponsible and damaging to our system. That has caused several states to institute restrictive voter legislation to prevent voter fraud. As of September, lawmakers enacted at least 33 laws with restrictive voting provisions in 19 states, more based on fear and political power than actual voter fraud. Democrats in Congress attempted to pass voting rights bills that would significantly shift control of elections away from the states. While proposing important protections, their efforts have also included a damaging hyperbole that deepens the divide and distrust in elections. Election control is best placed in the states with clear guideposts from Congress. People have greater trust in their local officials and state legislators. The media and national politicians need to step back and understand the deep damage they're doing to our system. Thank you. We are ready for your questions.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Susan, about a third of the way into their essay, they talked about the number of people registered compared to the number of people who actually voted. Do you want to hit that one?
Sure, I'll take that. Do you have it? You mentioned, I think, a little bit, but can you explain why so few people actually voted that could vote?
So a lot of people feel that their vote doesn't matter. So I talked to my neighbor about voting, and what she told me is that she feels that her vote doesn't matter because people see the popular candidate win in elections. So say like 56 to 44%, but then they see the electoral votes come back and they see that the electoral votes, the popular candidate loses. And they're like, well, why did I even vote in the first place if the person that most people are voting for loses? And this goes all the way back to civic education and light and understanding and Robert Dahl's True Theory of Democracy. So in our state, we have a civics bill. When we were in 8th grade, we took a civics class. But other states, such as when we talked to Rhode Island, they were shocked that we had an 8th grade class where we learned about how our government works.
Yeah, and I also think people not trusting the system is probably one of the main reasons they don't vote. 70% of Republicans in the previous election believe there was some sort of fraud, whether it be widespread or just something wrong with like mail-in ballots. They did not trust mail-in ballots. We actually talked to our state representative, Dan Carey, and our state senator, John Wheelis, and they both agreed that post-COVID, there should not be mail-in ballots, but they did agree to keep like pre-registration, early registration, early voting, anything that only extends democracy and does not deepen distrust in the system.
Yeah, we also talked to our city clerk, Barbara Limbombard, and she said that in Easthampton, in our town, we have paper ballots and we have elections that are close to the people, which allows people to further trust the government because people are distrusting the government, and having it close to the people and having it in your local town, having local government elections makes it easier for them to trust. And also, she said that the equipment that we use is not connected to the internet, which is another reason why people are more likely to trust the elections.
Thank you.
Interesting. Your Honor?
Can you tell us what the Supreme Court has decided in the area of gerrymandering and the effect of those decisions?
Well, Shavi Reno made racial gerrymandering illegal, but political gerrymandering is still around. We can see in Rucho v. Common Cause, the court decided that they could not rule on something like this because of something called the political questions doctrine. And the court will not rule on anything that they deem as a political question in order to attempt to remain neutral.
People also feel that this is another thing that makes people feel like their vote doesn't matter. We see with voter dilution and with political gerrymandering where they create districts where there's people that have easily win their party easily wins that district, and then the little amount of people that are in the party that they're going against feel like there's not even a point in voting.
Yeah, and you can see in the current case, the current Alabama case, Merrill v. Milligan, where it's contesting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which sets a formula for minority majority districts. And in this case, there's only one minority majority district that was drawn on the map. But according to the formula in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, there's supposed to be two, so they're suing.
Do you people understand that this competition will not be able to be held, at least on voting rights questions, if it were not for the state of Alabama? Do you people realize that? We contribute to every essay in the competition, I think, but on this unit, maybe more than any at all. You talked about the Electoral College a little while ago. So we've asked this question 2 or 3 times today. Rhode Island, Ethan, by the way, was one of the groups we asked. California was. And y'all are sort of in between those two extremes, maybe. If they did do away with the Electoral College, and I don't think they ever will, but if they did, given the disenfranchisement things you talked about, would that help Massachusetts or hurt Massachusetts in the long run?
I actually think it would more or less help Massachusetts with getting rid of the Electoral College. It doesn't matter what political party you represent. It doesn't matter what political ideology you believe in. Massachusetts is, as everyone knows, majority Democrat. People see Massachusetts as a blue state for years and years. But actually, a recent survey showed that 60% of Massachusetts is Democrat and 40% is Republican, effectively doing away with the Republicans' representation. So I think anything that increases representation, anything that increases the positive right to vote, no matter what political party you align yourself with, is always going to be positive.
Yeah, like what I think, Mike, like you said, it's almost impossible for this to be changed. But I think that's something that could benefit people participating more. Is independent redistricting committees that, such as like Arizona has enacted and California is looking to test. I think that this will help people trust the election system more, because that's what people hear about a lot, is changes in the gerrymandering in their own state. And to have an independent independent like state legislature, those minorities, as Jonathan was talking about, like the 40% Republicans, will feel that they have a chance to actually win.
So yes, it would help then.
Yeah.
To do away with it. Interesting. Susan?
Do you think non-citizen residents of the United States should be allowed to vote? Why or why not?
I actually do think they should be allowed to vote. I think voting is a fundamental right. Passes the Glucksberg test established in Washington v. Glucksberg, which is necessary for order, liberties, and is a long historical tradition. But it's not only a fundamental right, it's an extension of a natural right established by John Locke's ideas of a social contract. If the people have the right to life, liberty, and property, but he also said that people have the right to revolution. And one of the main ways that people can deter from revolution is actually by voting and participating in your local government. Therefore, it's an extension of your natural right, which all people are born with.
I think that currently in New York, they've looked to do this. And I think that based on New I State v. Liebman, which is laboratories of democracy, I think that depending on how it goes in New York is whether we should look to see to do it nationally.
Yeah, and to go off of what John said, if this is everybody's fundamental right to vote, it goes into Robert Dahl's idea of true democracy, where one of the key elements is effective participation, and another one is inclusion of adults. And so without having these people have the right to vote, you're taking away two of the pillars of true democracy, which is taking us further and further away from the goal of the true democracy that we're looking to reach.
It's also self-determination, which is another one of Robert Dahl's theories. The people represent themselves the best. You individually represent yourself the best. And if these people are in our society, participating in our society, whether they're a citizen or not, especially locally, they should have some say in the government.
Thank you.
Switching gears, can you tell us why you think that the framers did not include voting as an express right either in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights?
I honestly don't know why they would do this. I think that voting is a fundamental right. They knew the importance of voting. There was voting in their general assemblies. They understood it. The entire idea of equality pre-Constitution was political equality. They wanted representation in Parliament, and after that, they wanted checks and balances. They wanted representation accurately for the people. I truly don't understand why the framers didn't put it in. But I think one distinction we can make is later, preceding generations, in the Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, it actually Akil Amar argues that we do have the express right to vote. It says the right to vote shall not be abridged for any male over the age of 21. Now, obviously, the male part would be undone by the 19th Amendment, and over the age of 21 would be undone by the 26th Amendment. But if we use that wording, we could have a positive right to vote. The reason we don't is because of the enforcement clause in that section, that they have, if you don't follow that, your state would be limited in representation, and it's extremely hard to do so.
Yeah, I think not having the express right to vote and having it only be implied throughout the document is one of the biggest problems. And I think another reason or another solution to this problem would be adding another amendment giving us the positive right to vote. And I think a way we could do this is by looking at the 26th Amendment, where it says you can't take away the right to vote on the account of age. And if we just take out the wording on the account of age and we make a new amendment using the same wording as the 26th Amendment, just taking that part out, it would give us that express or that positive right to vote that we're looking for.
I wish you'd quit saying on the account of age. Every time you say that, you look at me, and that bothers me really badly. It really does. I know we've got less than a minute. You're talking about the fundamental right. So did the Constitution, I judged with a fellow the other day who said the Constitution didn't give me the right to vote. I was born with it. It's such a fundamental right. If I live here, if I was born here, if I pay my taxes, if I obey the law, I've got a right to vote. But if the Constitution gave it to me, it could come along and get amended and take it away. Do you agree with him, or do you think he just didn't really get it?
Well, I think that the right to vote, it is a fundamental right. It does pass the Blacksburg test. But I think that right now you can see that it's being treated more as a privilege.
You can see this in cases such as Marion County v. Crawford and Shelby County v. Holder. It's so easy for states to take away the right to vote, such as voter ID laws, specifically photo ID laws. You can see with photo ID laws, it almost serves as another poll tax. You have to pay for these photo IDs, and that should be outlawed by the 24th Amendment, but it's not. Just because the states have a legitimate interest in protecting against voter fraud, but they don't have to actually really prove anything because it's under rational basis scrutiny.
Let us see how wonderful that was. What a great.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to the students, and the judges will give you your feedback now.
Susan, what you think?
Oh, I have to go first. I can't just
Oh,
say
God.
ditto.
Turnabout fair play, I guess. for
Yes.
both of us.
I enjoyed our time together. You obviously have spent a lot of time thinking about this and working about this and possibly arguing amongst each other about this. I got a nod, yes. There's just so much involved, and you really hit all the amendments, I think, that has absolutely anything to do with voting. So you had a lot of nice case law, and of course you mentioned Shelby County. It was mentioned at least twice.
5 times.
Crawford versus Marion. So bingo, we are, since I'm from Indiana, where Crawford was from. So that was very nice. I wish we had more time to do this and go through this, but of course, sure you're happy that it's almost over. But I truly enjoyed our time together, and I thought it was a job well done. Thank you very much.
Judge Talman, before you give your feedback, it's only fair. They were quoting Dahl over and over and over, and he was very much against judicial review. I just wanted to mention that to you before you gave your feedback.
Notwithstanding that, I was going to commend you for focusing your opening statement on Dahl and his 5 criteria for representative democracy. I think that was a good organizing principle for your opening statement. I appreciate the fact that you mentioned all the constitutional amendments that deal with voting. There are quite a few of them. And you're the first team that mentioned that many states expanded their voting provisions because of the pandemic. I appreciate that point. And in making that point, one of the things you mentioned was mail-in ballots. But I would point out that Colorado is one of the states that has had mail-in ballots for like 10 years or more, and it's of course predated the pandemic. So mail-in ballots are to some extent independent of the pandemic. I appreciated in your response to questions that you discussed both racial and partisan gerrymandering. That was good. You mentioned independent redistricting commissions. You deserve about 27 demerits for mentioning Arizona rather than Colorado. Colorado now has an independent redistricting commission. Actually, we have two, one for congressional seats and the other for state Senate and House of Representatives. And I think it has worked well the first time that it's been in effect. Finally, I wanted to comment on the last question I asked you about why the framers didn't have an express right to vote included in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. I think the reason for that was because they were wary of giving rights to the people. If you think about it, the only place in the Constitution where there's a specific right of the people to vote is for the House of Representatives. Originally, there was no direct election of senators. There's still no direct election of the president because of the Electoral College, and Supreme Court justices are not subject to popular vote. So I think the framers were very concerned and wary of having the people overly involved, notwithstanding they're creating a system of checks and balances and representative democracy. But I think you did a really excellent job in answering our questions and in laying out the historical basis of voting in your opening statement. So congratulations.
Well said. I have two small pieces of feedback I want to give you that I really want to give you. But before I do that, I need to ask you to help us do something. You've heard me carrying on with Roger a lot of times, how he and I got to know each other, how I began to love him. He was the facilitator for the judging group that I was in a number of times. One time I was with him all 3 days of a weekend. He had to go into intensive care after that, but he survived it. But he's one of the best facilitators of all time. He just simply was just great at guiding us around and helping us with our questions and those kind of things, because it's a hard job. We've been guided today by another one of the best ones. We've been moved smoothly in and out of rooms and kept on schedule and everything else by Marcy, and she's been such a help to us. Would you join us in thanking her for her good help today? Marcy, thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. You're a great team to work with. And again, Massachusetts, oh my goodness, great job. And
Great job.
really, we're looking forward to seeing the results tomorrow, but we just know that maybe it'll be a repeat performance like last year, right?
Yeah, maybe
But
so. That'd be okay with them. Let me tell you two things before we go. One of them is a very, very small technical thing, but I notice it and I appreciate it. 98% of the classes, 98% of the teams, maybe just about all of them, but you refer to presidents, sometimes senators, but usually presidents by their last name. They say Obama did so-and-so, or Trump did so-and-so, or Biden is doing so-and-so. And it almost sounds disrespectful when they do it, because of the level of position they've risen to, whether I agree with them or violently disagree with them. I shouldn't say violently, vehemently disagree with them. Violently is something else altogether. Let me get to that. They deserve, for better, for good or ill, they deserve their title. And every single time I ever hear you refer to somebody, it's President Obama, President Trump, President Biden. Always do that. Even in conversation with somebody, you don't know who you're talking to sometimes, use their titles. It's a sign of respect, and maybe it'll come back to you. It's one of the things I appreciate about Easthampton. You're so good at that. And the final thing I'll say, and then we'll all go and Roger can buy everybody a drink. I wish that I've said this maybe 3 times all day, but it sure does apply here. And this is not a criticism of any other school or any other teacher, but it's a credit to yours. All the problems that you're describing, all the problems, and gosh knows there still are some after 150 years after this amendment was written, could be fixed. I honestly believe if every junior or senior in the country could have a whole year of civic education taught by somebody like Kelly Brown, I think it would just make a gigantic difference in our culture and our approach to changing the laws that really do need to be changed. So use your influence. There she is. There's our buddy. Use use your influence to be sure everybody gets to have her as a teacher for a whole year sometime and just watch things get better and better and better and better and better. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you all.